Borthakur IAS Academy, an endeavor of excellence.
Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, welcome to Borthakur IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. Today is 10th of June and I'm here with another segment of Current Affairs 365. This is your one-stop solution for any news and updates which will help you to prepare for your civil services examination, and it is also going to be helpful for any other Assam State services. So don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook as well as Instagram. So the first news of the day is about the recent meet of BRICS foreign ministers, where they have put out a joint statement on multilateralism. BRICS, as I have mentioned multiple times, that it is the acronym for the grouping of world's leading emerging economies, namely Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. South Africa was invited to join BRIC in December 2010, and thereafter the group they adopted the acronym of BRICS. And to add to this point, India has assumed the presidency of BRICS from January 2021. So first of all, what is multilateralism? It is the process of organizing relations between groups of 3 or more states. And this concept, it mainly comprises certain qualitative elements or principles that shapes the character of the institution. These principles are mainly indivisibility of interests among all the participating members, then a commitment to mutual exchange, okay, and thirdly, they put up a system of dispute settlement which is intended to enforce a particular mode of behavior among the member states. It is important to have a multilateral outlook here now, among the member states nowadays, because of the increasing incidence of lawfare. The misuse of existing international and national laws by several countries to gain unfair advantage over other countries is one of the main reasons why we need to have a multilateral outlook. Okay, we can take the example of imposition of extraterritorial sanction by the US that has affected the development of developing economies like India and China. Then also the dual use of global supply chain. Some of the developed countries, they have jurisdiction and control over the global supply chain, because of which the growing convergence between commercial interests and strategic goals, it has enabled them to have a vast extraterritorial influence, and this has created new power asymmetries. We can consider the example of China through the Belt and Road Initiative, which is enhancing its role in the global economic governance, right? And then also because of lack of global framework. The global community, it has not been able to come up with a single platform, okay, or any global agenda on issues that are related to terrorism, climate change, cyber security, etc. And because of this, okay, and because of this global lack of global cooperation and lack of global public health framework, COVID-19 has taken the shape of a pandemic, okay, and it has taken so many lives. So in this meeting, 6 principles has been laid out by the BRICS for the task of strengthening and reforming the multilateral system. So we will see one by one what are these 6 principles. First, it has aimed to make global governance more inclusive, representative and participatory. Okay, it will facilitate greater and meaningful participation of the developing as well as the least developed countries. Second, it has focused the importance of inclusive consultation and collaboration for the benefit of all. Then third, it has decided to make multilateral organizations more responsive and action oriented based on the norms and principles of international law and spirit of mutual respect. Fourthly, it will use innovative and inclusive solutions, okay, which will include digital and technological tools. Then next, it will work on strengthening the capacities of the individual states and also the international organizations. And lastly, here they will try to promote people-centered international cooperation from the at the core of the core concept. People-centered international cooperation will remain the core concept of this multilateralism that has been put forwarded in the recent meeting. The second news is about the scheme of Surakshit Hum Surakshit Tum Abhiyan for the aspirational district. It is recently launched by Niti Aayog and Piramal Foundation in 112 aspirational districts. This drive is launched to assist the administration in providing home care facilities and support to all the COVID-19 patients who are either asymptomatic or have mild symptoms. And most of the districts, they are in the states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Maharashtra. The campaign is under a special initiative of Aspirational Districts Collaborative, where the local leaders, civil societies and volunteers, they will work with the district's administration to address emerging issues across key focus areas of the Aspirational Districts program. This program was launched in January 2018. It was named as Transformation of Aspirational Districts Program, TADP. Aspirational districts are those districts in India that are affected by poor socio-economic indicators, and they are aspirational in the context that improvement in these districts, they can lead to the overall improvement of human development in our country. Okay. Now coming to the objective of this Surakshit Hum Surakshit Tum Abhiyan, it is aimed to reach every affected person in these selected 112 districts. And this campaign is expected to play a key role in district preparedness for managing nearly 70% of the COVID-19 cases. This is going to reduce the pressure on the health system, okay? And it will also reduce the spread of fear amongst the people, okay? It will provide a long-term support to India's poorest communities in the aspirational districts by addressing the lasting impact of COVID-19. Here at the Government of India level, the program is anchored by Niti Aayog, and in addition, the individual ministries will have they will assume the responsibility to drive the progress of the districts. The main objective is to monitor the real-time progress of the selected aspirational districts. Here, the aspirational district program, it is based on 49 indicators from the 5 identified thematic areas. This will focus on improving people's health and nutrition, education, agriculture and water resources, financial inclusion and skill development, along with basic infrastructure. Okay. And with the states as the main driver, this program, it seeks to focus on the strength of each district, identify their low points, okay, for immediate improvement, and to measure progress and rank them accordingly. The next news is about a meeting hosted by China for the foreign ministers from 10 Association of Southeast Asian Nation countries, that is the ASEAN countries. This meeting, okay, it marks the 30th anniversary of China-ASEAN dialogue, and with this meeting, China looks to deepen its economic ties with the region, and also it will aim at pushing back the renewed effort at regional engagement from US and Quad grouping. So the key points of this meeting, it includes China's cultural diplomacy stand, where China has reiterated cooperation with ASEAN nations, and it has pointed that they should jointly carry forward Asian values in a subtle dig at the West. And China in 2014, they had also put forwarded the idea, which was Asian people to uphold Asian security, and they still through this meeting they are still trying to stand for the idea. Okay. Along with this, China has offered the Asian countries its vaccines as well as closer cooperation on the joint vaccine development and production. Then coming to maritime security and disputes, China has called for considering the lifting of China-Asian ties to comprehensive strategic partnership, and this has been this has been mainly done to strive for an early agreement on a code of conduct in the South China Sea. China is also banking on deep economic links to offset maritime disputes. Then coming to the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. In this meeting, China has pushed for the early implementation of RCEP, which was signed by China, ASEAN countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand in November 2020. And we'll have to add here that India withdrew from the RCEP largely because of its concern, okay, that it would open it up to the Chinese goods amid an already tensed situation and imbalance with China, and the failure of the agreement to adequately open up services. ASEAN countries or this grouping, it plays a key role in Chinese economic and strategic interests because the region, it provides some vital sea lanes of communication which represents China's access to the global market. It also includes vital imports of Middle Eastern oil. Then if we see the relation between India and the ASEAN nations, we can see that traditionally the basis of their cooperation mainly lies at trade and people to people ties. Okay, this is because of the shared historical and cultural roots, and more recent cause is the area of convergence, which is balancing the China's rise in the Southeast Asian region. Okay, and the two meeting or summit which was conducted last year between Asian nations and India, it includes the 17th ASEAN India Virtual Summit and also the 8th East Asia Summit Economic Ministers meeting. It comprised of 10 member states of the ASEAN along with 8 other countries. And both India and ASEAN nations, they aims to establish a rules-based security architecture for peaceful development in the region, which is in contrast to China's aggressive policies. And here we'll have to make mention of the Act East policy, which was introduced by India in 2014, and it was introduced with a more strategic outlook than its previous incarnation, that is the Look East policy. Here, Act East policy will mainly focus on engagement not just with the Southeast Asian countries but also with those in the Pacific. The main focus of Act East policy is on enhancing connectivity between India and Southeast Asia. Now, if we take a quick recap of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, then I have actually repeated this many times in my previous analysis. It is a regional grouping that promotes economic, political and security cooperation. It was established in August 1967 in Bangkok, okay, and its chairmanship, just like BRICS, it rotates annually based on the alphabetical order of the English names of the member states. The members includes Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. And next in this slide, you can see the Asian grouping members, okay. The next news is about another initiative of Niti Aayog along with Rocky Mountain Institute. Here they have tried to provide a new report on fast-tracking freight, okay, in fast-tracking freight in India, which is a roadmap for clean and cost-effective goods transport. This is going to provide key opportunities for our country to reduce its logistics cost. Okay, it will provide a boost to our Indian economy, and also it will be important to reduce the growing carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, so first of all, this Rocky Mountain Institute, it is an independent non-profit organization which was founded in the year 1982, and we all know about Niti Aayog, which is considered as the public policy think tank of the government of India. It was established with the aim to achieve sustainable development goals with cooperative federalism, which will involve the state governments of India in economic policy making process, and this is going to focus on the bottom-up approach. That means from the state government leading up to the center. Okay, so that's why it has been considered as a bottom-up approach. Here, the involvement of state governments has been given importance in economic policy making. Okay, and it was established to replace the Planning Commission, and here the Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman. So the key points of this fast-tracking freight in India, it includes the growing freight transport demand. Because of the rising demand for goods and services, freight transport demand is expected to grow rapidly in future. And while freight transport, that is transport of goods and commodities, okay, it is essential for economic development, but this transportation has been plagued by high logistics cost, and it also contributes to the rising carbon dioxide emissions and air pollution in the cities. And our country has the potential to reduce its logistic cost by around 4% of the GDP, and it can also achieve 10 gigatons of cumulative carbon dioxide emission saving by the year of 2050, between 2020 to 2050. So what is the need to make freight transportation cost effective? First is that this transportation of goods and commodities, it is a critical backbone of India's growing economy. Now more than ever. Okay, so it is important to make this transport system cost effective, efficient and cleaner. Efficient freight transport, it will also play an essential role in realizing the benefits of existing government initiatives like the Make in India concept, okay, Atmanirbhar Bharat and Digital India. This will successfully, if this particular concept is deployed successfully, okay, then the proposed solutions can help India establish itself as a leader in the logistics innovation and efficiency in not just in Asia and Pacific, but also regions beyond. Some other recent initiatives, it includes dedicated freight corridor, okay, which is a high speed, high capacity railway corridor exclusively meant for the transportation of goods and commodities. Then we can also make mention of the e-way bill integration with FASTags and RFID, FAME scheme, Bharat Stage 6 norms, corporate average fuel efficiency regulations, CAFE regulations, etc. Now let us discuss the importance of blue economy in recovery of our economy after the pandemic. Okay, here we will discuss the importance of blue economy as a model of development. We all know that one of the major challenges that will be followed after the pandemic is the loss of jobs and livelihoods, and this blue economy has been seen as a way of recovery and growth from the oceans. Okay, blue economy, it represents the enormous potential for sustainable economic activity and job creation after the crisis. Now this term blue economy, okay, it was first introduced by Gunther Pauli in his book The Blue Economy, 10 years, 100 innovations, 100 million jobs, in the year 2010. It is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, and ocean ecosystems health. Okay, this is going to advocate the greening of ocean development strategies for higher productivity and conservation of the ocean's health. So India, we all know, it has more than 7,500 kilometer long coastline, okay, and having such a vast ocean resource at its disposal, this can present a huge opportunity for boosting the economic growth and also to tackle the problem of unemployment, food security and poverty. The resources in these areas, it can spur India's economic recovery in a manner that will also be beneficial to the climate and environment. Now there is a difference between blue economy and ocean economy, because in ocean economy model, there is large scale industrial nations. They are exploiting the maritime and marine resources, often without keeping in mind the effect of these activities, okay, on future health and productivity of the resources. But in case of blue economy, it is not just about the market opportunities, but also it is going to provide protection and development of more intangible blue resources. Example, the traditional ways of life, carbon sequestration, the coastal resilience to help vulnerable states mitigate the devastating effects of climate change, etc. Blue economy, it will provide for an inclusive model in which the coastal states, which sometimes lacks the capacity to manage their rich ocean resources, they can begin to extend the benefit of these resources to all. Okay, and how this blue economy is going to be significant in the growth and recovery of Indian economy is that first is high return on investment, and as per a new research, it shows that every dollar which is invested in key ocean activities, it yields 5 times. That is $5 in return or even more. Okay, and it is good for the government of India's vision of New India by 2030, which has highlighted the blue economy as one of the 10 core dimensions of growth. And this is in synergy with the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, it supports all the United Nations SDGs, specifically SDG number 14, which is life below water. Then it also supports the increasing demand for renewable energy. Offshore regions, they have tremendous potential in the form of offshore wind, waves, ocean currents, that includes tidal currents and thermal energy. So it is also going to provide sustainable sources of energy. Okay, and then lastly, the importance for India. India's blue economy, it supports 95% of the country's business through transportation and contributes an estimated 4% to its GDP. So engagement in new sectors like offshore wind, marine biology, biotechnology and other such activities, it is going to be very helpful for our country's economic growth, and also it is going to provide employment and new job generation. So this was all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it will be useful for you all. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll see you all again tomorrow with another session of Current Affairs 365 only on Borthakur's IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. Till then, take care, keep learning. Bye-bye.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS Academy